I think it's a perfect opportunity for us to pass it over to Meg Stowe and Steve Heath for our next session, where we're going to be having a conversation with about a dozen students from around Rhode Island, talking about some of the most pertinent issues that are coming up in today's education system. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Steve.
All right, thanks, Avi. It's so great to see everybody here. And as I mentioned in the chat room, I've been working in K-12 schools for about 30 years, a bunch of different places, a bunch of different schools. And we're here to hear from the 12 students on this panel. And in a moment, I'll ask you guys to introduce yourself, and Meg will help make sure that everyone can chime in. We want to balance the introverts and the extroverts. And, the basic theme of the conversation here is like, how are you doing right now? And what have you learned, if anything, during the crisis that might influence how we think about education and learning when we go back to school? What ideas can we come up with that might teletransport us to a better model of education? So right now, I'm going to ask the 12 kids to just say, where are you, who are you, and what school do you go to? Just make it quick, and then we'll begin the conversation. So I see Andrea right there, so why don't you start?
Hi everyone, my name is Andrea. I hope you all can hear me fine. I am a senior at Classical High School, and I come with PVD on Makers. Was there anything else I needed to say?
That's perfect. Gabby,
Awesome.
Gabby, I see you. Why don't you go?
Hi guys, my name is Gabby, and I'm a freshman at Rogers High School, and I was brought here by Steve.
Hi, I'm Neha. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I go to Rocky Hill, and yeah, I'm really excited to be here.
My name's Willa, she, her, hers. I'm a senior at Rocky Hill as well, and really excited to be here. Came here with Miss Stowe, so yeah.
Ezra.
Hi, my name's Esra. I was brought here by Amy, and I'm a senior at Lincoln High School.
Teo.
Hi, everyone. I'm Teo. I'm a freshman at the Met High School, and I was brought here by my mentor, Keith Rinaldi.
Brandon.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brandon. I am a junior at the Met, and I was brought here by PVD Young Makers.
Hi, everyone. I'm Deborah Adekunle, and I'm a junior at Classical High School, and I'm here with PVD Young Makers.
Leslie and Rosalinda.
Hi, I'm Leslie. I'm a senior at the Met High School, and I was brought by Amy and Keith.
Hi, my name is Rosalinda. I am a junior at the Met High School, and I was brought here by Keith.
Ambar and Amira and Jayshell might be late today, but I'll introduce them when I see them pop in.
Okay, so we're ready to go.
Yeah.
So we want to really turn the floor over to you guys and get us adults out of the way. And so just think about, how are you doing in this pandemic? Are you learning anything about learning and ideas that you might want to have to bring to the future? Does anybody want to just jump in and take it away? Go for it, Brandon.
For me, it's been really interesting because I spent a lot of my school day interacting with different people, whether it be my college classes or on campus or in my other organizations. And so the first few weeks felt a lot like a detox. Like it allowed me to take some time and really consider myself in a larger scheme. But now I'm starting to realize that a lot of my flow came from interacting with other people. So I'm starting to feel like a bit more drained, even though I'm doing less, which is weird. I feel less energized and less passionate about a lot of like the work we're doing, even though it's stuff I like really care about. It's just hard to sort of connect to it again without having people around. And it's also sort of shown me that a lot of the learning I'm doing is disjointed. So for example, if I wanted to do some research personally by myself, if I wasn't going to the Met, where it's a school where I can like sort of just show that work, that sort of that sort of knowledge that I just gained, that knowledge that I really was passionate about, wouldn't account for anything. And I think that that's something that we as educators need to start thinking about, is those little side parts, those little research projects that we take on without notice, and how can we account for those, and also how can we encourage students to do that? Because I feel like without a strong system in place, a lot of students aren't going to feel like any of their work matters right now.
Andrea.
That's me. Um, it really depends on where specifically you catch me during the day. Many of my teachers are just so wonderful, and even during a pandemic, you see them and you're like, okay, we're doing this together, it's fine. I found that although it's harder for me to learn online and I'm more of a hands-on learner, it's still easier to learn with them because they're being there. Like, they're being very supportive and just very helpful, although the pandemic is obviously hurting a lot of people, and it's obviously being frustrating for all of us, I'm sure. But even with that, I found a lot of teachers being very supportive of me. And then if you find me at bad times with a couple of teachers, then there's some change needed, and there's some extra training that some educators need when it comes to dealing with situations like these. We're all going through a traumatic experience together. It's something that none of us were ready for, and it came out of nowhere, and we're all scared, we're all worried. And I think educators need to understand that as students, we also are worried, we also have lives, and I think that they need to be very very much more ready to be able to handle the fact that because we're suffering and because we're dealing with our own things, we might not be the best students right now, and we might not be perfect, and we might not get A's all the time, and we might not make it in time. But that doesn't change that we're still good students in itself. And I think that doing a little bit of training with them would be so helpful to everyone. Yeah.
Rosalinda or Deborah, any thoughts?
For me, school-wise, I have lacked a lot of motivation, and like I am not as engaged as I was before in school, because my teachers can tell you that I was the person raising up hands in class trying to answer every question, and it's just really changed for me because I cannot sit down in front of this computer screen all day long. I just feel like it's taken a toll on my mental health in general, and I'm trying to deal with that because I have more time at home with myself, but it's not easy. It's not. So yeah, it's not been easy.
Rosalinda, what are you thinking?
For me, it was probably a good and bad thing. I realized as a student, I put my value into my own work. So when I noticed I was slacking off, it took a huge toll on my mental health because I started feeling discouraged when I wasn't getting things done. So it made me prioritize myself more. So I feel like that's what I gained from understanding that, oh, this is time for me to focus and do what I passionately want and what I love.
Willa.
Yeah, so when this started, I was like, I know what's going to happen. I'm going to feel really productive for 1 week, and then I'm going to start slowing down. And that was exactly what happened. But I find that teachers are being really understanding. And if for me, part of the times when I'm most anxious is when I'm not able to get out of the house, be with other people, be outside. So teachers have been really understanding of like, if I'm like, I really can't do my work right now. But we recently moved to pass fail, and I was really worried that that would cause me to be surrounded by like other people who like aren't really caring as much. But I find that when students aren't doing their work, it's not because they're not caring, it's because something's going on. And I think that a lot of the time we think that students are a lot more grade motivated than we actually are. I mean, I know we are like a lot of the time very grade motivated, but we also are motivated just by ourselves to want to learn and to want to gain as much as we can from each class.
Ezra, do you identify with that?
Yeah, I was just gonna say how I agree so much with that, that people like they need to have their own like motivation behind what they do. But I have like a kind of an unusual story where like last year I was like living abroad and the school that I was doing was online. So when I was living abroad, I had the opportunity to continue my education in America. So that during that period, the school that I was doing, it kind of was like, oh, kind of like a pass or fail where you submit like an English essay that you wrote for like 3 hours and then you get 100 just for like submitting it. And that kind of got rid of the magic for me. So then when we went back to this online learning here in America, it was like reinvigorating for me because the teachers were actually there and like I had work that was like actually being graded and it was nice. And I like how like of course there's some kinks that need to be worked out, but I like how there's a new medium for when, for example, when we have snow days, we could just do online school instead of adding like 5 days to the end of the year. And like maybe some people might miss their vacation or, you know, their plans might be messed up. But I'm used to being like alone and I like being like at home in my, you know, little area. I'm more of like an introvert. So I like how this time was time for me to like reflect on myself and see where my family is and just be more present with family. I haven't really seen a decrease in like schoolwork. If anything, it might have increased, but I think it's nice to remind people that they're human and like not always go, 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 because eventually one day we will go back, hopefully, and we'll remember this time like, oh, remember that, and we'll all have this kind of shared struggle and like have a common thing. So I like it.
Thanks. Hey, here's a question to keep you guys going. Where should the motivation come from for your schoolwork, or what is it like to have agency, or you know, on your schoolwork? Dale, we haven't heard from you. How about chiming in? Dale.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I think. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I think motivation for students, especially in the situation we're in, can stem from a few different things. But for the students that really want to learn what they want to learn, I think it should come from some things that they're interested in and passionate in, and that they could explore further on top of their day-to-day classes. Because I think if students really want to learn and figure out what they want to do with their lives or how they want to spend their time right now, it should be on their own and exploring and discovering those things. And I think that it could be motivated through that, or as I forgot which student mentioned it before, but you can also be motivated through the grade that you're getting. But I think if you truly want to learn and be motivated at the same time, it has to be stemmed from something you're interested in, because if you're not interested in it, you're not going to learn it.
Yeah. Anybody else want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So in terms of agency over my education, something that I've noticed is I've kind of stepped out of just being a student and kind of gotten to look at more of the educational system as a whole, because all of us are trying to figure it out together and creating this whole new system. So a lot of my teachers are being really open and asking for feedback and trying a lot of different things. So we're kind of getting to explore creating like a whole other curriculum as students and teachers collaborating together. And I'd really like that to continue once we go back.
could you dial in like a really kind of precise thing that you're excited about that has come out of that? What have you created that's like got you psyched up?
I mean, we've like explored a lot of new platforms, like where we had a Pear Deck or we had a Kahoot for different classes. And like we had one class where for at least 20 minutes of the class period, we just all went around and gave our teacher feedback of what we liked and what we didn't like. And then she was really receptive and changed a lot of the things to make it like more equitable for us.
Thanks. Hey, Brandon, I think you had mentioned earlier something about like getting credit for some of these learning journeys you're on. Could you or anyone else imagine what that might look like in high school?
So I can relate to that because I'm in a junior class school, so we do like junior research. It's just like a semester project where you research a topic you feel very passionate about and you get like credit for that semester. And that semester was one of the best semesters I've ever had at class school because I was actually researching and like learning about something that I really am passionate about. But after that, that never happened again. And I'm part of a group outside of class school called Youth in Action where I could do most of that. But because of time, class was taking so much of my time, I couldn't like focus on that. And now we're in at home doing distance learning. I've had a lot of time to do that. So I've been feeling much better about like learning about stuff that I'm passionate about. And I wish that they could turn that into credit for kids in high school because we're putting a lot of energy into something we're passionate about and we're getting knowledge out of it, but we're not getting anything towards our education at school. So I think that would be great if they could do that. At least learning.
Thanks. Hey, Andrea, do you want to chime in on that a little bit? I know you've talked about you working on the job and all you learned there.
So because I have 2 different jobs, I work at Planned Parenthood and obviously with PBD on Makers. All of my experiences are learning experiences. All I do is learn. That's like my whole job is to learn, which is amazing that someone might be like, do you want to just learn the things that you love? And you're like, yeah, why not? Because I am honestly doing like hard work when it comes to these learning experiences. I am not only doing hands-on learning, we're doing visual learning, we're doing auditory learning, we're doing all of the types of learning that I can even imagine. It's insane. And I feel like that takes a lot of my time, which I appreciate that time more than anything. But that takes a lot of my time. And I think that learning is just as important as any other type of learning. I think learning how to, for example, I learned a lot about my own self by working at Planned Parenthood and PBD on Makers. And that's not something I could do at school because in school I'm supposed to be one specific way and I'm not really allowed to make mistakes. I feel like if we incorporated something like, I don't know, I think there's something already called ACN, which I was a part of at one point in my life. If we incorporated that, but for things like PBD on Makers or even Planned Parenthood internships, I feel like we could get so much out of it because I would not only be getting credit for the things that I love doing, which is what we're going to college for, right? We're going to college to learn about the things that we love, and then we get a degree on the things that we love so we can keep going. And I feel like if we can implement that, but now, that would be the greatest thing because I feel so happy doing the things that I love and learning. But then I get to school and all of that kind of goes away because they're not giving me that chance to learn those things that I love. Trust me, I love math, but not in that way.
Good.
I want to keep it going.
Yeah. Thanks, Andrea. Hey, Gabby, I'm not sure we've heard from you. Why don't you share some of the things that I know you're thinking about that I think are absolutely critical?
So this time has given me the opportunity to hone in and focus on my activism, and the thing that I'm most passionate at the moment is about racial equity in education. So using this time, I've been able to join like racial equity meetings and have necessary conversations that we need to make, and regulations and systems, like the school to prison pipeline system, or the fact that for every 10% increase in students of color, schools experience a $75 decrease in per pupil spending, and things like that, and figure out ways to try and implicate the change in my school.
Thanks, Gabby. I know a lot of us adults in the Zoom meeting here have spent years, if not decades, contemplating how change could take place, but many of us feel that it's really the students who could be the strongest voices. Could any of you see things looking differently when you go back to buildings in the fall? Does anybody have any ideas that how things could look differently as soon as September?
Willa.
So this isn't a specific idea as so much as, so we're all here like talking about this, and there's like educators here and students here, and like I would hope that like the educators here aren't like, oh, these students are saying things are like bad with school, that means they think that I'm a bad teacher, they think that like they're being disrespectful, which I don't think is what this conversation is at all. But then when you're a student, it feels that like at school, if you make a suggestion, then like that's disrespectful, that's like that's like saying things that you're not really supposed to be saying, it's not really your job to have an opinion there. So I think like we definitely as students want to have voices in this, and like want to have voices in our own education and have a lot of ideas about this, but I find that I personally like don't really find somewhere where I specifically can speak within school and say like, I think that it would be cool if we work, like this isn't working for me, this type of like lecture, even if I know that a lot of other students are feeling the same way that I am.
Anybody else?
I totally agree with you, Willa, and I feel like there's so much pressure in school, like especially with all these kids like growing up, and everyone's kind of in these stages of like not hate, but like people will be more self-conscious, or they'll make fun of other kids because of something that they said, and that doesn't create a good space for creativity and like for people to express their opinions. And this kind of reminds me of this like NASA study that I ran across like a while ago. It was like from the age of 4 to 5 we have 95 or 98% creativity. And then by the time we get to like age 10, it goes down to like 25%. And then by the age of 15, it's like 10%. And by the age of like 31 years old, we're like 2% creative. And I think the study says that it's from the lack of like divergent thinking and people thinking to, out of the box instead of like seeing a problem and like having a bunch of so instead of having one answer that creates a bunch of facts, so like, oh, this person needs a new pair of shoes, what are the facts that go from that? So like, oh, they're poor or whatever. Instead of that, you could say, how can we get this person some more new shoes? And then you can fill or answer the question with ideas that stem creativity and like different ways of approaching that question. And
yeah, well said. At the risk of overstepping my bounds, I think I'm going to organize a Zoom meeting with Andrea, Gabby, Teo, Brandon, and Willa, and task you guys as the grassroots task force to get the ball rolling. And you don't have to do it in school. Maybe you can do it somewhere else.
To add on to Ezra's point, I think that I hope that once we get back to a more normal setting, is that we continue to allow this sort of transition period, because as we've mentioned before, a lot of students and a lot of teachers are having trouble adjusting to the system. So I find now more than ever, a lot more like teachers are willing to work with students, and more than that, they're allowing students to be able to fail. And I think that that's a really important thing that our schools haven't really begin to really do yet. Like Ezra was bringing up, when we create such like rigid answers to everything, we we kill those divergent thoughts. We kill those sort of ideas that allow students to really develop as their own people. And I think that once we start this sort of level of support, once we go back to schools, I think we'll allow student voices to come out. I think we'll allow real change to happen in our schools, because if we continue to, get hierarchies of thought where, say, one student is better than other students, it's not supportive for anybody, it's not supportive in any real sense.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Brandon. I think even this time and this online learning has almost brought teachers closer to students in a way, because of how much more communication has to be between them. Whether you have a student that's never used Zoom before or has never used Google Classroom or doesn't know how to use a computer. I mean, there's got to be a lot more communication, and I think that shouldn't stop when online learning ends. I think that has to continue, throughout education for the rest. And we do it a lot at the Met, between, students and staff and advisors, and it really helps build not only connection, but a support system for any student, whether it's academic or something that's happening in their personal lives. They almost feel like they always have someone to go to that they feel comfortable to talk to. And I mean, that's important, especially right now, but I mean, in the future as well. So I think we have to keep that connection and communication up.
I would like to add on to that. I thought about that too with online schooling. I feel like it's going to be more encouraged for students like in high school and middle school. Because like I know in college you can choose to do online schooling to help with the flexible timing and all that. And everybody has a different learning style. So some people are finding this quarantine is more easier for them because they have more flexible time to worry about their family and then do the schoolwork. Like they're not forced to be in a building. So I feel like schools are going to promote, oh, hey, I understand that you have this situation going on in your life. You can do online schooling as long as you're actually doing it. And I feel like in a weird way, I think teachers are I'm hoping that teachers get more paid, like get a bigger check than they usually do, because teachers do earn less for the amount of work they do. And parents have noticed that the amount of effort it takes to teach a child, to be patient with a child, to always find a quick way to teach a child because this one way won't work for them. So this is like what I see for our possible like nearby future.
Do you see, all of you students, do you see the COVID crisis, distance learning reality opening a door, providing some kind of opportunity to have the adult stakeholders reimagine and reevaluate what makes up or what constitutes a meaningful learning experience?
I would definitely say so. And I feel like part of it is a lot of the time, that our teachers are spending more time online and they're getting more familiar with new ideas. And I had a teacher, and at the beginning of the year, she had called one of the students in our class, he's mixed, a mutt. And I remember on Cultural Day, I was wearing a Jamaican shirt, and she'd went on this rant about how violent and murderous Jamaicans are. And then this week, she assigned a project about diversity to promote conversations about diversity, because she's been using her time outside of school to join racial bias training for teachers.
Oh,
Wow. Nice.
There you go.
Yeah.
Leslie, where are you?
Right here. I was just going to add from the last topic or this topic.
Yeah.
A lot of people, especially seniors and juniors and stuff like that, we have jobs. Some of us, we live by ourselves. Some, we have to take care of our family and everything. So I feel like this online education, it could either stem on further where people have the option to work or whatever, and then that work that we have is do that day. Because for somebody who works, for me, it's very useful to have that day rather than make it due at 10 o'clock in the morning or a specific time. It's very useful for them to make it a whole day or even a whole week, because we all have responsibilities to fulfill. And yeah.
Neha.
Something else I've seen is the lack of extracurriculars in the arts during like distance learning and COVID-19. And I feel like I can see the effect on myself of like not being able to like do that on a daily basis like I used to at school. But I would hope that a lot of other people can also see the effect that this is having on them, like not being able to go to rehearsal every day or not being able to sing in chorus every day. And I really hope that there's a lot more emphasis put on that in the future.
I would also say that the arts don't just have to be confined to like be like this extracurricular. Like every student has like different things that they're interested in, and a lot of times when even when it's like a group project or something, it's like this is going to be a presentation, but when you put a group of students together, you're putting together a group of people with different interests and different talents and like different ways that they can work together. And like each different group that you're going to have is going to have like a different way that they could approach a situation, approach a problem, or approach a learning experience. So I think we need to invite students to be able to find different, like their own different and creative ways to like bring their skills that they already have to something that they want to be learning now. And what I would say is like, we're here and we're talking because we got this invitation to talk and to like use our voices and say this. So to educators, like we do want to say these things. So I would say we need an invitation to say them, because I think there are a lot more students than just us few who have all these ideas and who would have even more ideas, but we need that invitation to say it.
This is your invitation, my friend.
Right.
And I would suggest to you too to ask Meg. I think you work with Meg to say, how can we do this again? And we'll give you the keys to the room and we'll leave. And you come up with a plan. Because I heard words like hope and feel, but if you really want to make some change, it probably would, you got to think a little. Hope is good, but you got to, action. Where's the action,
Yeah, and test and be fearless. One of the things I was thinking that I'm hearing a lot is this notion that's stopping you all from getting what it is you feel you want and will clearly work for and go out of your way to work for in your own time, right? Is this idea that our content, our curriculum is just so additive, and it's just the end game and the goalposts are always about assessment and all of that. And so I think if you could learn what you'd want to learn, how you'd want to learn it, what would that look like? What might that look like? Are you working on projects that are so large in scale that they kind of make sometimes your schoolwork pale in comparison, in just in terms of size, because you're so passionate about them? What are y'all working on?
Who's working on something?
I know they all are. Is a leading question.
So I'm lucky enough to go to a school that's project-based. So I've been able to do deep dives and to really focus on things I'm passionate about. So what's really been keeping me going is the film project I've been working on. So I've had to do some reconstruction of it. But for this trimester, as you know, I can't really do any filming. I'm doing a lot of research on basically the history of cities in a way. Sort of seeing how did certain cities, how did certain groups of people form. Like today I was doing research on Chinatowns and sort of the idea that it seems like so normal now because of our collective, but it's really weird that like a group of people migrate from one country just to end up in one specific area. And the thing is, once you start doing research, once you start really seeing the seeds of all of this, you realize a lot of it stems from, systematic oppression. And you still sort of see it to this day. And so to be able to express that, I would have to do the research, and being able to do that during this time has been really helpful.
Just unmute yourselves, students.
I'm more of the medical person with activism, and with this corona pandemic, the Latino community has been more affected in Rhode Island. So I've been doing research on why are the medical industries, the minorities are so affected by the medical industries, because looking into my research, more women, Black women that go into hospitals, pregnant Black women that go into hospitals have a lower chance of coming out alive than other women. So I've just been like doing a lot of research, and I'm writing a paper on why that's happening, and hopefully that can get me a grade in my class. I don't know.
Well, good for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll add on to that kind of independent learning stuff. So I've actually just started an online college course on social psychology on Coursera, which I'll link in the chat afterwards. And I think every student should go on there and go find a course. They have a whole bunch of courses on variety of topics that you could be interested and passionate on. And started the course, and I've been really interested in psychology for a while now. And I've just been, looking for ways to get into it more. And that was a resource that my teacher provided, and I checked it out. And I've been doing the course for about 4 weeks now, and it's so fun to learn about it and watch all these lectures from these professors from universities, and you feel engaged in part of it, and I'm actually enjoying it. And since I go to the Met, I'll be able to get a social science credit for it, upon all the assignments and showing notes from lectures and presenting on it on my exhibition and so forth. But just the idea of going out and doing something, extra credit that you're not really doing for the credit, you're doing for yourselves. And I really want every to go out there and find something that they can learn that's not for their teachers or not for their report cards, but it's for themselves.
I would like to add on. So before social distancing, I started hosting my own racial equity meetings with the help of Fab Newport and their space. And that started becoming really time consuming, overlapping with my schoolwork, because I was so passionate about it that I'd spend all of my free time figuring out how to make meetings more engaging. And I especially wanted to think about how to get students of color to kind of realize what is going on in the system and then empower themselves and each other. So using this time, it's been really helpful to read different books and get new textbooks and stuff, and just hone in on the skill of trying to bring all the students of color together to advocate for themselves.
Awesome.
I would like to add to the research and my bad. I'm sorry. The research and stuff. I want to do something within plant-based dietitian or alternative medicine. So I've been researching, and I've been seeing that it's more on the rise now. More people are actually using teas, or they're using all this herbal medicine, which before they would be using all this Western medicine, all these types of informal medicines, and now they're using these alternative. People are trying to eat healthier, they're trying to boost their immune systems and stuff like that. So I feel this time you have that time to research more on what you're so passionate about.
Yeah.
I'm mindful of time right now, and let me have this be potentially the last question. What do you think, as a result of being at home, away from your teachers? We did have in our previous meeting, we did learn that some students are not having as much supportive experiences as others are just in this call. What are your main takeaways from distance learning in these 4 or 5 weeks we've been doing it? You all have been living it. That we can take with us as gems to plan what could be in the future? What are some key takeaways that, moments of aha clarity around education?
Oh, sorry. Go.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. I had a big aha moment actually today. I reached the point with one of my educators that was very, very hard to reach because I've been waiting for 4 years. And I finally reached it, and I wrote a letter, and I didn't send it to him, but I might. But I posted it, and I realized that a lot of people were feeling the same way as me. They were feeling very unhappy with the way some people handled this pandemic, especially in schools. That was obviously only 1 out of 6 teachers that I have, and 5 of them are the most wonderful people I could ever ask for. But there was this problem that everyone saw, and everyone was like, oh my God, you spoke up about it. And I was like, wait, everyone's going through this. Why did no one say anything? Why can't we speak? And I realized that we have all been feeling like freedom of speech is not really important in the class unless it's positive. And we can't take a step back. We can't say no. We can't say this is not okay for us. We are the people you're teaching. We are like your responsibility, and you're the one who's supposed to care for us, and you're not doing it. We can't say those negative things. And it takes our freedom of speech away, and it takes a lot away from us. Our own responsibility and power, it takes it away. And I realized that today because I took my power back, and I saw a lot of students doing the same. So that was my big aha moment.
Well, and I saw Esther snapping to that. So, all right, who's next?
I'll go. I think the biggest takeaway for me, and I think all students and faculty and staff and teachers, should be that we all should be ready to adapt together whenever and wherever and whatever the situation may be. This terrible virus kind of came onto us pretty sudden, and I mean, I don't know exactly how many schools were ready for online learning, but I think instead of being, mad about it or complaining about it, I think we have to adapt to it and grow with it and just do the best that we can as students and as teachers, and things like this, asking for feedback and getting one-on-one with students and teachers together is one of the most important things to grow and adapt. So this is exactly what everyone should be doing, and I'm so thankful for everyone here that's listening and taking the time to actually consider what we have to say. So I mean, I think the main takeaway is adapt and grow together.
I agree. And I think that this new way of learning kind of switched the roles in some regards, because a lot of teachers they're not used to this like virtual learning. So by switching the roles, we're seeing that both students and the teachers have a lot of knowledge that they can share to each other. And normally in a classroom setting, it's usually just the teacher imparting their knowledge onto the student. And a lot of these, all of your, projects that you're doing in your free time, it kind of made me think, like, you don't really see little kids, like, seeing their passions and stuff. It's only until later that we kind of realize what our passions are. Mm-hmm. And by that time, we're kind of already stuck into this other way. Like, let's say you find out that you're interested in art in 12th grade, but you've been going to this public school for 4 years. But if you were to realize that you were interested in art the first year of middle school, you might change your life according to that decision. So I think it's important to, change the narrative and see what kids are really interested in and give them the power to really explore their interests earlier on.
So that actually brings up the thing that's been going through my mind this whole talk. It seems to me we have, obviously you're mostly high school age students here. Can't get out of my head how this would differ, not only opinion-wise for younger students, middle school or elementary, but also what we think we could actually do for those younger grades. Like, it'd be great for high school age students if we could focus more on passions. But do we think it's possible with the younger age kids to be able to do that without still getting those foundational skills? And maybe you guys can answer this if you have a chance, but What do you think? Do you think those foundational skills are as important as they used to be? Like, do you think school should be focused more on your passion, your pathway, or should just be adding your pathway on as an option? But do you still think we need these basic skills?
I think that we need some basic skills, just like to have a base understanding of like history or math or whatever. But I think the grading system can affect it, because like my mom, she wanted to be an archaeologist when she was like very little, and then throughout her schooling she got terrible grades in that class, but she was passionate about it. So that kind of turned her off of it, and she was like, you know what, I don't like history at all. And to this day, she like still hates history. So I think it's important to teach kids like the fundamentals of every subject, but also put a real like importance on their individuality.
Yeah, and I think that, like, sure, everyone needs basic skills, but you don't have to teach basic skills in the same way you've always been teaching them. I mean, everyone needs to write a paper, but not, and like be able to form an argument, but you could learn how to do that instead of like writing about some period in history that no one's really invested in. You could write about like current politics, or you could write about an interest. Like, you can learn those skills in a more interesting way and in a more engaging way, because when students are interested and have like personal investment in it, they're a lot more likely to put effort in and get a better product out.
Well, and I would also add, you know, from as a kind of a former classroom teacher, and not to, you know, wax poetically on pedagogy, but when done correctly, PBL models largely anything inquiry based as far as your approach to teaching and learning, if it's done correctly, embedded within those student-centered, meaningful learning experiences that are ideally co-created with students, embedded in there are skills that one would need to employ at any given moment in order to fully live into that area of interest, right? So you're interested in this, then you need to be able to write about it or communicate about it, et cetera. So, I mean, there's some real thick nuances. Lots of people that are in the industry of education that we care a lot about, the creation of great teaching models. So that's not for this format, but I think these students would argue that you do need to know how to write. You do need numeracy. You do need to know some basics, but they've been doing the same thing for largely 14, 16 years, right?
We'll solve that problem in the next edition of this, but it's important. But before we get teletransported to our breakout rooms, how about just, 3 students chime in with a takeaway, and then we're gonna,
wrap it.
We'll all get an introduction, but go ahead. 3 kids close out, and then we're gonna shift gears. And that was awesome, everybody. Beautiful stuff.
One of the takeaways I've gotten was that I've gotten to learn more about myself and the way I learn in the classroom rather than at home, but also I've gotten to connect more with my teachers and share our understandings of what we go through, but also what they go through. And it has helped a lot throughout the online courses.
2 more.
No, she's not.
Gabby, you could go first.
Oh, thank you. So a big takeaway that I've gotten from this is that with the pandemic and everything, it's very evident that to improve education, what we need is a sense of urgency, and not just to apply it to the pandemic in this sense, but then to take it on to every other problem that we have in education, whether it be mental health or systematic racism and things like that.
Yeah.
For
more.
me, I think
Last word.
For me, the takeaway so far has been the importance of not commanding students on what's important, but collaboration, and allowing students to sort of be as active a part in their education as teachers, whether it be like through kindergartners learning to write, learning to at least talk about things they're passionate, all the way to the highest level of seniors taking on projects they care about. I think it's important that we focus less on getting a good grade or getting into said program, and more on building out students and building out people.
All right.
Thank you all so much for stretching your ideas, sharing your ideas and stretching yourselves. I know being in a Zoom, this is many adults in this room. This is their first time doing this. So for you to have anchored and been the panelists, the focus of this panel. I applaud you. You inspire every one of us. Any of you choose to run for president, I think we're all voters for all of you. So Amy is next, Amy and Avi.
Thank you both so much. To all you students, very inspirational. I'm sure some of you are following the chats and you have so many fans around you and more eloquent than I ever will be now or in the ever, and definitely when I was your age. So I appreciate a lot of what you're saying and really empathetic to everything you're experiencing, and really appreciate some of the insights about how you plan on changing for the future and supporting others.